Many giant tech chip makers such as Apple, AMD, and Nvidia are delaying the transition of their next-gen parts, which will be utilizing TSMC's 3nm node. According to a report from a Taiwan hardware news site, they claim the manufacturers will be staying on current nodes until 2025. So I wanted to talk about how this will impact the GPU market, and as a PC gamer, what this means for us. Let's discuss that in this video. Hey, if you enjoy content like this, drop a like, make sure to subscribe, and smash that bell so you never miss another video. Hey, what is going on guys, Dandy here, welcome back to the channel and I hope you've all been doing well. I wanted to talk about an article I saw on WCCF Tech's website, who are sourcing a Taiwan tech news site called DigiTimes. This was an article they posted late last week in April, and here they talk about that due to the slowdown in the economy and lower demand in the tech space in general, major semiconductor companies like Apple, AMD, Nvidia, and MediaTek and more are delaying their moves to TSMC's 3nm and pushing back orders. They mentioned that Nvidia probably won't be making the switch to TSMC's 3nm node until 2025 for their next-gen products. Now, it doesn't say exactly which quarter of 2025 they'll do that. If it's Q1 2025, then that means the wait for the products won't be as long and it'll just be slightly over 2 years. However, if they are delaying until Q4 of 2025, then that will indeed be considerably longer than their usual release cycle. Typically, Nvidia has followed a 2-year release cycle for the consumer graphics cards. The RTX 20 series came out near the end of August 2020, the RTX 30 series debuted in September of 2020, and the RTX 40 series came out in October 2022, but not all of the cards in the series came out. In fact, we're still waiting on Nvidia to release their quote-unquote mainstream graphics cards from the 40 series, which are rumored to come out later this month. So that means Nvidia's next generation RTX 50 series, which will apparently be based on the Blackwell architecture, may not hit the market until their next gen Ada Lovelace GPUs are 3 years old. Now, seeing this report and article didn't surprise me one bit because I'd say the writing was on the wall. We had heard many reports that Nvidia and even AMD who are scaling back production of their current gen GPU models because demand is so low. The reason why demand has been so low compared to where it was a couple of years ago is due to a few reasons. Since there was a crypto mining boom, many GPU miners and scalpers were buying whatever GPUs they could get their hands on to either mine with or flip to make a profit. That was where the vast majority of demand was coming from, but even still, a considerable portion of regular consumers, that includes your PC gamers, content creators, workstation users, needed GPUs as well. Since many people were stuck at home due to the lockdowns or were working from home more often, then that prompted people to go back to using a home desktop, or perhaps they wanted to build a gaming PC to bide their time with. I knew a few people who had paid scalper prices for the RTX 30 series GPUs. We're talking about over double the MSRP because back then people were just desperate for a card. However, over the past year, the demand for these consumer graphics cards has taken a nosedive, and not just graphics cards but other components in tech in general. For starters, once the crypto mining boom crashed, that huge portion of GPU buyers just vanished from the market overnight as they had no use for them. On top of that, the demand from regular consumers who were interested in gaming graphics cards had already settled. Many I know who purchased a scalp GPU said that they're going to be done buying a GPU for a while. They'll try to ride this one out as long as possible since they paid so much money for it. The market didn't get revitalized a little bit once the new generation cards came out, but only the high-end GPUs like the 4090 and 7900 XTX were in the most demand and had the most attention since they seemed worth it for the money and actually offered a new performance level that wasn't achievable from the previous generation. But that was it. For the rest of the options, the sales figures have been horrible as people just aren't interested in these new GPUs for different reasons. The price hikes on the other GPU segments deterred many buyers because they didn't feel like they were getting their money's worth, especially when you see cards like the 4070 Ti, which had a drastic increase in price over the previous gen and really should have been called a 4070 and sell for much lower if we're to go based on its performance and specs. This had led to an oversupply of GPUs. Nvidia stuck with lots of inventory, not just for current gen RTX 40 series, but also for lower end stuff from the RTX 30 series. Since that's the case, Nvidia doesn't intend to produce a lot of gaming GPUs until the supply starts moving again. However, if the prices aren't coming down, then that's not going to happen for a while. So what we got here is an old-fashioned stalemate situation. This also isn't just happening in the consumer DIY space, but also with OEMs and HPC. Like I said, since the demand in parts in general has gone down, many of them aren't putting in the same volume of orders as they were before. It just doesn't make sense when you're sitting on inventory and supply isn't moving due to a lower demand. Then adding in more supply on top of that is just going to cause prices to go down even further, and they definitely don't want that because they want to keep their margins as high as possible. With all of that said, when you see reports like this where large companies are not in any rush to move to a new node for future products, thus releasing delays, it does make sense from a business standpoint. Now, I have seen some reactions online where some have expressed disappointment that this is happening, and I'm honestly confused as to why this is. This really isn't that big of a deal, and for me personally, future generation GPUs are one of the last things on my mind right now. Something that I've gone over a few times in my previous videos is that currently with 1080p and 1440p being the most dominant resolutions, the vast majority of PC gamers would still be fine with the GPU that had the processing power of around an RX 6700 or 3060 Ti. Another reason why this is just another nothing burger is because so many modern games that are coming out are turning out to be huge flops. I'm not even talking about bad ports or performance issues on launch, but the games themselves aren't even worth playing. Forspoken looked like an intriguing game, but I think most people within the PC gaming community were just intrigued by the graphics and tech that was implemented in the game, such as Microsoft's direct storage, but from reviews, they said it had a lackluster story and unbearable characters. Redfall is another game you can add to that list. In fact, it had an even lower player count for its debut than Forspoken. And these games are coming out from large studios with millions of dollars poured into them, with apparently multiple years of development with nothing to show for it. It doesn't matter how good the game looks. If you want to see pretty graphics, you can download Unreal Engine 5 and play around with realistic environments for free. People don't want to see games just evolve with good graphics, but we want to see games come out and make strides technically that make an impact on the story, the world, gameplay, etc. If people stick with older games because these new games just aren't exciting, then they'll also have no reason to upgrade or even get excited for these next generation graphics cards because they have no use for them. Hogwarts Legacy was a game that came out recently and was one of the only few that was well received because aside from its terrible performance issues at launch, the game itself was actually pretty fun, and those performance issues got resolved rather quickly. So once people saw that, hey, I can still run this game fine with appropriate settings on my RTX 2060, then that's all I care about. Along with that, people will just continue to lower settings for the games and continue to use their graphics cards until they finally run into that one game that refuses to start up with their current hardware, which I don't see happening for a long time unless you're using a GPU that has like 1GB of VRAM. This is why popular handheld systems like the Steam Deck and Asus ROG Ally have sparked up so much interest surrounding them, because they're able to play a huge library of games, whether it be from Steam or through emulators, and they won't cost people an arm and a leg. Both Nvidia and AMD could release new generation graphics cards next year, and they'd have the lowest reception out of any of the series released so far, unless the prices are like 50% lower for each segment, but we know that just won't happen. So right now, people just don't care. Even if their next gen GPUs are delayed until 2025, then that's fine with me. Now, there's still a chance that their next gen Blackwell GPUs from Nvidia may not even end up using TSMC's 3 nanometers and will instead utilize TSMC's 4 nanometers, which, if it does, then we could still end up looking at a 2-year release cycle. Kopite responded to a tweet from WCCF Tech, and he's a well-known hardware leaker on Twitter. He mentions how Blackwell will not use 3 nanometers, but these things can change easily, especially if we're talking about late 2024 or early 2025. In the meantime, I think as a stopgap, what we'll see happen is that next year Nvidia might release a refresh of the 40 series with some super models, and AMD could do what they did with the 6000 series where they released X50 models, so a 7950 XT, a 7850 XT, etc. Though, like I said, unless they address the abhorrent pricing issue and or a new exciting game comes out, which, makes people actually want to upgrade to one of these new GPUs, then I just don't see sales improving. It's one of the major reasons as to why Nvidia is pushing things like path tracing so hard, because they need something to sell all this new hardware. They see that they can't rely on game developers anymore, so they're trying their own methods at a software level. There are some interesting times ahead for sure, but it's not what I'd call exciting. A combination of expensive hardware and terrible new games makes the fun part non-existent. If you guys found this video to be informative and entertaining, then leave a like. Let me know your thoughts and comments down below. Be sure to check out the video description for cool links and ways to support the channel, such as using my Amazon affiliate link. And if you're interested in seeing more content like this, then consider subscribing. I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.